Hello, welcome to Leading Under Pressure. I'm Dr. Roxanne Langlois. This is part 2 of my review for the longevity protocol done by Bryan Johnson. So you can go and check out part 1 if you haven't. This is part 2. So here I'm going to be giving you a bit more of a real talk about how you can use some parts of this protocol to benefit you as personally and also as a leader in your work and the impact that you want to have. And I'm going to offer you some reflections about how to implement this and give you a way to analyze what your risks are and how to reduce those risks and to better identify which areas would be highest impact for you. So I want to start out by putting a bit of perspective. So if we look at longevity, if we look at the longest living person to be recorded in history, this is a woman called Jeanne Calment, who is a French woman who lived until 122. She died in 1997. So there are, interviews, there's a lot of information out there about her, including about her lifestyle habits. And of course, we don't, as I said, there is no one size fits all in health. You never want to replicate what someone else has done. If someone has success with a certain strategy, it won't necessarily be replicatable for the other person, because two people can look identical from the outside, but you don't know what their thoughts are, their blocks are, their resistance, where they have resistance. So we don't, their ability to handle pressure and stress. So you can never tell from the outside how someone will react to something. The best way that you can figure that out is by being in tune with your body and developing that mind-body connection to get more awareness and more information that is more personalized. But let's just take Jeanne Calment as an example. So this woman lived until 122. And let me tell you, it's not just because she was doing, eating a lot of vegetables or French cuisine. And she certainly was not doing a longevity protocol of any kind. In fact, when because I study I study a lot of people and longevity. I read a lot of research on these things. Of course, it's not research, but she is a well-known person. And so as I was researching her, a couple of years ago, I just found her extremely fascinating. So she's this really witty, funny woman. And my first language is French, so I can understand whatever she's saying in her native language. So it's just so fun to watch her. So this woman ate at least a pound of chocolate per week. She drank red wine every day. And she also smoked 2 cigarettes per day until the age of 117. So the only reason that she stopped smoking, she says that it's because she couldn't light her own cigarette up because she couldn't see that well once she turned, at 117. So she decided, nah, I'm not going to smoke anymore because I don't want to ask anybody for help. So it's like this very fierce and independent and witty woman. She was very funny. A journalist once asked her if she was worried about wrinkles, and she replied, she said, "I've only ever had one wrinkle and I'm sitting on it." So anyways, she's just really funny and a fascinating character, and I don't know, maybe humor was part of her longevity protocol. I'm not really sure, but and we'll never know. And of course, we're not wanting to infer, of course, I'm not insinuating here that you should start smoking 2 cigarettes a day or eat a lot of chocolate. There's no direct causal relationship here. It's just an example of the oldest living person on earth that we know of, and they were not so strict or punishing with their diet, right? So it's just to balance this perspective a little bit, because what happens in leaders, we often our default when we're trying to get a good outcome, our default can be control, and controlling things is our way of feeling safe. So we tend to control a lot of things, right? If you're looking at the health of your finances, you're going to be controlling cash flow in, cash flow out, So control can be our default. And this is just a reminder that control is not everything. There are limits on what you can control, and trying to control everything might be something that wastes more energy than it brings you benefit. So that's for you to evaluate. You can just keep that concept in mind, and as you're exploring what works for you in terms of supporting your body, your longevity, your health, you can kind of keep that in mind, right? That ultimate control is maybe not the best approach. And so speaking, like, as an example of rigid control, Bryan Johnson demonstrates this very rigid protocol. And, it's super interesting. And I love that he is doing this. He is putting, I think, all his data public, so we can actually see, what percentile he is in terms of all these metrics: body fat, blood sugar, all these, blood pressure, all these things. And so it's very interesting for us to be able to learn from that. However, recently, Bryan Johnson publicly shared that he had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I want to be really clear here. Like, I'm not insinuating that his protocol failed or caused it, or that he's even doing something wrong. That's not what I'm insinuating here. But it just shows that even if you do everything right and you control every variable that you think is necessary or possible, our bodies can still surprise us. And that's not, we can't control everything. And accepting that not everything is controllable, I think, is a good life lesson for leaders, type A personalities. This is a good lesson for us to learn. And, I think that truly, I admire Bryan Johnson's courage to publicly talk about this, as someone who is a very well-known person in the longevity space. This is information that I believe we can all learn from, and I'm really grateful that he's courageous enough to share this, because I think there's lessons that will benefit all of us here. So, yeah, the moral of this thought is that no matter how much we optimize, we can't control everything. And this is because not everything is measurable, right? There are things that that modern science cannot measure. Like, if you don't like your life, or if you don't like your relationship, or you're in a place that you've outgrown, or you are hanging out with people who have not evolved at the same level as you, and you're not feeling stimulated by your environment, and you're not satisfied, that's not something that can be measured. But is that something that can affect your health and your body? Of course it is. It absolutely can. And that's not something that we can have metrics or data about, but that's something that you have to tune in with yourself and be honest. So, letting go of control, and disease in itself, I don't think is a failure. I think that's one perspective that many people have, is that if you have a disease, you have failed at something. And actually, that's not, I really don't think that that's true. I think that a disease is an indication that you may need to listen a little bit more to your body. It's an opportunity to reassess what you've been doing, how you've been feeling, to be honest with what's going on in your life and how you could be more supportive of your body. And I think that, whether you agree or not with that perspective, that disease is not a failure, it's helpful to think like that, because it gives you more opportunity to grow from this challenge and ultimately to get to know yourself better, which is, the ultimate goal of business, of any challenge that we have. We want to be knowing ourselves better. So, and back to Jeanne Calment. So living till you're 122. One of the things that I think, is not so looked at is meaning versus longevity, right? A lot of people think that they want to live a very, very long time. They want longevity, but actually what people really want is significance. It's a meaningful life experience. And sometimes I think we confuse these two. And also, I think that sometimes longevity is kind of a cover for procrastination or procrastinating on living a life that you actually want. And so it's kind of like saying, I'm just going to buy myself more time because I haven't experienced everything that I want to do. But really, if you think about it, like, what are you going to be doing at 115 that you couldn't be doing now or in the next decade or a little bit more medium term, right? You don't want to be thinking in terms of, I will just live a very long time, so I don't need to get a move on, right? You actually are limited lifespan, because I think we would both agree that yes, we can extend our lives at the moment, and I don't know, maybe one day we'll have the technology to live forever. But I think that there's beauty in the fact that our lifespans are limited, because when you have unlimited time, there's no urgency to do anything. It makes things less special. It makes things less worthwhile. When you know that something is going to end, you get your shit together and you take action. So I think there's something beautiful in not relying on longevity, but rather focusing on what is a meaningful life for me and how can I be achieving that, and putting the focus on the meaningful side of things rather than on, I just want to live a very, very long time. So I think it can be a bit of a trap in the biohacking world. So, just make sure that you're focusing on the right things. And, personally, I don't want to live till I'm, over 120. I don't think I want to live that long. That's a really long time. And I personally would much rather be going, focus my energy on going out to see a sunset on Tuesday night. I'd love to, I want to take time off whenever I can. I want to be doing work that has a lot of impact. I want to, I want to be living fully right now. I want to feel good in my body. I want to have deep quality sleep that's restorative and that feels good and feels like I can sustain vitality and interest in my life currently, now, not in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So, about sleep, once in a while, I want to have that flexibility of going to bed at 2 a.m, right? But it's not because I'm building somebody else's dream or I am, too anxious or not feeling good. It's because I've chosen to do this deliberately, right? So, I remember there was like a little bit of a wake-up call when I was working in the ER. I was doing this 48-hour shift and the nurse calls me at like 2 or 3 in the morning and wakes me up because this drunk guy got punched in the face and she wants me to examine him. And I'm like, oh, like that is not what I want to be doing with my life, right? And it was a bit of a wake-up call of, and I think, people might not like hearing this, right? It sounds like I don't want to have any responsibilities, but that's not what this is about. This is about creating a life that is intentional for me, that is aligned with what I actually want, living a life that is of significance for me. And for me, being in the ER and being awoken to tend to drunk guys punching each other is not something that I wanted to do. And neither, and I'm not being critical here. This is only my personal experience. I totally respect all my colleagues who run the emergency department, and I'm so happy that some people find their calling there. It just was not mine. And I had to become really honest about that, because I had, worked very hard for this. I had sacrificed lots of things. I had spent more than a decade in school, a lot of money on this, and I had a fancy title, the job paid well, but I had to be really honest with myself that, re-prescribing medication and being awoken at night for certain things, of course there was some meaning, but it was not the deepest, most fulfilling path that I could have. And I knew that. I knew that profoundly. I knew that I could have a lot more impact doing something that I was more passionate about. And then when I discovered coaching, that's where I realized this work energizes me. I could do this day in, day out. The sessions with my client, seeing the impact that I have on leaders energizes me. And but I had to be really honest, and I had to make some hard decisions of switching careers and ultimately letting go something that seemed so fantastic, so fabulous, that I had worked so hard for, and that had a lot of prestige attached to it. But it was not it was not the most meaningful life experience to me, and I chose to do what actually felt more meaningful. And I'm so happy I did. And this is just, I encourage you to also be honest with yourself. Are there areas of your life that you're like, this is not this is not my ideal life situation? And if no one's perfect, and my life isn't perfect either. So if there are areas that you're like, ooh, this is not optimal, well, maybe this is your opportunity to question and be honest with yourself. How can you make more aligned changes? Because ultimately, if you are not satisfied in one area of your life, if you're deeply dissatisfied and it's not a temporary thing, I'm not talking about small, bumps that you can go through. We all have challenges, but really something that is not aligned with what you want for your lifetime and your life experience. No amount of supplements, protocols, technology will help that. People who are not happy and pretend like they're happy, you can run into problems, right? Because you're pushing down signals from your body. So that's something that I very much encourage you to look at. Discipline, control, data have their place, but they shouldn't replace your relationship with your body and you being honest with yourself about what it is that you really want. So that was the more deep part of the episode, I guess. So back to more practical, a little bit more grounded, practical things. So here are 3 questions that I am inviting you to ask yourself if you want to improve your health and your capacity to lead. So to support your capacity to lead. So the first question is, what is the highest impact foundation that I'm currently neglecting? Is it your sleep? Is it that you are not exercising as much as you would want to? Are you eating in a way that is supporting your energy, that you are feeling nourished, right? Is it because, again, the control factor here is that we have a tendency, a lot of leaders I speak to, they try to control their portions, they try to restrict the calories, they try to not eat some of this, but rather than restricting and controlling, try to shift your perspective to how can I nourish my body? Whole foods, consistent meals, and organic, like homemade. That would be the ideal. But just shifting that perspective from restrictive to supporting, nourishing your body. If you ask yourself that question, you can make more headway than trying to count your calories. nervous system regulation. Is that an area that I could improve? Am I able to disconnect in the evening and the weekends? If I go on vacation, am I able to relax, right? I remember being on a beach in Brazil. I took a sabbatical year during my medical school, and I traveled to Brazil. And I remember I was on the beach in the middle of my sabbatical year, and I was just anxious, thinking of what? I don't know. But so are you able to tone down that nervous system activation? And if not, as I said, go check out my tension release playlists that I have on here. This will be greatly helpful. So a second question is a more simple one. Is my health strategy increasing my capacity, or is it adding more pressure? Is it helping me think more clearly, recover faster, and lead better? Or has it become another system I feel compelled to manage perfectly? So that's a pretty simple one. So generally, if it feels supportive, it will feel good. It doesn't mean that you'll want to get to the gym every day, but it will feel like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'm happy to do it, right? But if it feels more like more pressure, it will not feel good. It will feel heavy. It will be that to-do item that just drops lower and lower on your list. So just being honest about this is helpful. And then the last thing the last question is my pursuit of longevity helping me live and lead more fully now? So as I said, we are wanting to invest in our health, not just for tomorrow, 20, 30, 50 years, or however long you want to live. We are wanting it to impact our well-being today. Am I enjoying the relationships, the company, the life that I'm working so hard to build? Or am I simply becoming more controlled by all of this? So in conclusion, you want to be looking at, if you want to improve your longevity and support your leadership capacity, you want to be building the strong foundations. Watch part 1 if you haven't. You want to be using data intelligently, not solely relying on data. You want to learn to recover, so nervous system regulation is super important. Focus on sleep. And you want to maintain and strengthen your relationship between your mind and your body so that you can interpret the signs and the signals to get back into balance before they become a bigger problem. And then lastly, you want to make sure that the life and the business that you're building are ones that you actually want to be living in for a long time. So taking that honest look and making those decisions. So I hope you enjoyed this second part of the review of Bryan Johnson's longevity protocol. It was a little bit more of a talk about longevity and how it can apply to leaders. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to know if Bryan Johnson's approach inspires you, overwhelms you, or makes you feel like you should be doing more. Let me know in the comments. And if you are a leader interested in improving your long-term capacity, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. I'm Dr. Roxane Lacroix, and I'm wishing you a beautiful rest of your day. Bye for now.